Welcome back to Night Prayer Podcast. Today we're reviewing a horror story from the Twitter titled Best Maya. This one is shocking and based on a real experience.
We read it paragraph by paragraph, and after each one, we'll discuss, rate, and analyze it.
I already regret agreeing to this, but horror stories are my biggest fear. Too late, Sam. Let's start. Alright, paragraph 1, let's go. My name is Rizky, a 35-year-old man living in Cilegon, Banten. I am not originally from this area. I am from Sumatra, more specifically from Pariaman. The story took place several years ago when I was still studying at one of the universities in the area where I now live. More specifically, during a college break. At that time, I decided to return home by interprovincial bus, which took 2 days and 2 nights.
I think the intro is straightforward, but it already built the setting well.
Does anyone actually know how far Cilegon to Pariaman is? I honestly don't remember if it really takes 2 days.
Rizky sounds like a calm, normal guy. The way he introduced himself feels polite and simple.
2 days on a bus? No thanks, I already dislike the story from this point. I don't know Risky, but his tone sounds like someone who experienced something serious.
I boarded at the terminal around 3 in the afternoon. When I chose my seat, the bus I was riding was not too full. If I'm not mistaken, there were about 10 to 15 people on the bus. Since I was alone, I chose the seat at the very back, next to man wearing a hat and a sarung. I chose the seat at the very back, next to man wearing a hat and a sarung around his body. Later, I found out he was the backup driver. 2 rows in front of me was a man wearing a yellow batik shirt and a woman in a white and pink jacket sitting next to each other. When I passed by, both of them were asleep. Then, in the front row, there were other passengers.
I think the detail about who sits where is important. It's like setting up characters in a film.
I don't like the vibe of strangers sitting silently together. It feels eerie.
Wait, did he say the man with the hat was actually the backup driver? Does that mean he stays there the whole time?
The man in the pink and white jacket sounds young and quiet. The batik shirt man seems mature.
I think I remember reading similar setups in other horror stories. Quiet passengers who turned out to be important.
The trip was uneventful. Several other passengers boarded along the way to Merah Fort because the bus would be transported on a ferry to cross the Sunda Strait. When the bus entered the ship's hold for the crossing, I got off the bus and went upstairs to get some fresh air and enjoy the view. Since I wasn't carrying any lunches or other items, I was one of the first to get off the bus and immediately went upstairs. When I go out, the other passengers were still getting ready and packing their valuables too, so they would be left behind on the bus.
This sounds like a typically bus. Very routine, but the quiet part scares me. Do passengers usually bring all their belongings when going up the ferry deck? I'm not totally sure.
The other passengers sounds caution they don't want to leave valuable behind. I like how Rizky mentioned small details, makes the story easier to visualize.
I don't know why the woman and the captain went up earlier than him.
After crossing and docking at Bakauheni Port, Lampung without waiting long, I immediately got off and back on the bus. But it turned out that the man in the cap and the woman in the pink jacket had already arrived and were sitting inside the bus. They greeted the woman and as I passed by her seat, she only smiled like slightly without saying anything, but I noticed her eyes were puffy like someone who has just woken up, and she looked a little pale. After that, I sat back in my seat and waited for the other passenger to arrive before finally continuing the journey.
Her pale face and puffy eyes. That's a major red flag.
I had when strangers smile without talking. It feels unnatural.
Do we know if she talked at all so far? I don't think she said even one word.
I think she was exhausted or emotionally overwhelmed.
I don't know what's wrong with her, but she definitely seems up. The journey across Sumatra, which at the time did not have two-word access, took quite a long time, so the bus stopped many times for meals, driver breaks, prayers, toilet breaks, and so on. However, the bus I was riding did not have a toilet in the back, so the only things passenger could hope for when they needed to go was that the bus was close to us. I myself almost always got off at the very stop that was a restaurant to eat or just use the restroom, while resting my butt and back after smelling every sitting still for hours.
Heart feels peaceful, like nothing bad is happening yet.
How many stops do buses usually take on that route? I don't remember.
I don't like long trips without a toilet. That alone is horror.
Risky seems like someone who prefers being clean and comfortable. He always gets off the bus. I didn't know Sumatra had these few facilities back then. To make a long story short, we arrived at one of the more famous stops, the Omega restaurant in Dharmasraya, around 1 in the morning. However, at that time, I chose not to get off because I was very sleepy. I was I chose to remain seated in my seat, leaning my head against the window and trying to sleep. But besides that, it turned out that the woman in the pink jacket and the man from earlier also did not get off. But that didn't last long. The woman stood up and went to the driver. The two of them talked about something before the woman finally got off, leaving the man sitting next to her alone. That's all I remember before I finally fell asleep.
This paragraph feels like the turning point. The woman talking to the driver is so suspicious.
What did she talk about? She didn't mention the details.
I don't like this you left the man alone. It feels wrong.
Risky seems tired. He falls asleep quickly.
I feel like I read something similar before, but I forget how it ended. I woke up when the bus was backing up after finishing its meeting at home. Since I had slept enough, I got up and looked out the window to relieve my boredom. The trip continued normally until finally, at around 3:30 in the morning, the bus suddenly turned off the usual route. We then stopped at a yard that was already crowded with people. There was a blue tarpaulin tent and plastic chairs arranged in front of the house. When our bus arrived, the people in the house came out with sad faces, and some started crying immediately. I could see it clearly because I was sitting in the window row facing the house.
Is this terrifying? A crowd crying at 2 a.m.? No. Were they attending a funeral gathering? The tents sound like it. The people looked depressive. You can almost visualize their grief.
I don't like unexpected stops, especially ones involving crying people.
I don't know why the bus suddenly pulled off over them. The driver in front turned on the blue hallway lights and got off the bus. He shook hands with several people who seemed grateful to him. Di belakang, ada si X-Man Camembert. In the back, there is X will help. He said once. Then shortly after, the back door opened and several people got on while crying. At the moment, the backup driver sitting next to me immediately told the woman in the pink jacket to get up. The woman cried her heart out and hugged the man next to her before finally letting go and continued to hug the woman waiting for her pillow while still sobbing.
The woman crying lady confirms she knows the man.
This moment feels so dramatic and heartbreaking.
I had scenes with family crying. It hurts! Did the backup driver know the family from the beginning?
I didn't know she was related to him until this point.
Then, what happened next never crossed my mind. The man who had boarded the bus began to plan how to lift the man sitting next to the woman. They broke a long body cloth and wrapped it around the man's body. Then,
When people lift him, it became apparent that his body was stiff. I was shocked and immediately felt horrified. However, I didn't want to show it in front of the people there because I was worried it would offend them. After that, the man was taken into the house and the bus continued on its way. This is the scariest part. The reveal hits hard.
I really don't like covers on buses. This is nightmare. Wow. Was he sitting upright? Like the whole time? How?
The man wrapping him in plastic sounds so solemn and sad.
I remember stories where families post bodies to look alike. Creepy.
After a few minutes, the driver in front shouted loudly from behind the wheel so that the passenger could hear him. Sorry if you were shocked by what you saw earlier. His other passengers seemed to express their concern and protest what they had just said. However, I, who was sitting close to the two people, was truly at a loss for words. Driver apologizing shows the wasn't trying to hide it maliciously.
Is it common to use buses for transporting bodies into loud areas?
Otherwise, the passengers weren't told beforehand. The passenger must have looked shocked.
I don't know how Risky managed to stay calm.
During the rest of the trip, the backup driver sitting next to me finally shared his story with me. He began the conversation by apologizing for surprising me and not telling me from the start that the man had passed away. The substitute driver explained that the man had actually passed away before boarding the bus. Oh, wow. So he did not die on the bus. He died while traveling. And his family agreed to bury him in his hometown. Since they did not have the funds, they used an interprovincial bus service to transport him. They also deliberately arranged the position of the body so that it looked as if he was still alive and just asleep.
I think the family was desperate. They had no choice.
I don't like the idea of passing a dead body.
I remember hearing that some cultures do this, but I forgot where.
The backup driver sounds honest and gentle while explaining.
So the man died before boarding? That's shocking.
Yeah.
Okay.
The driver also said that he and the driver who was driving at the time knew about this from the start. However, in order not to disrupt the other passengers, they chose not to tell anyone and the people find out after the body was taken off the bus. Although there were no operation or other strange occurrences, I was still in shock until I reached home. This trauma even followed me when I returned to my hometown. I became sensitive whenever I saw passengers who were silent and didn't wake up. I worried that the bus I was riding might also be crying about it, just like when I declared.
Oh, the ending is more sad than scary. But the trauma is real. I had how it affected him long term. Do people still use buses for transporting bodies today?
Risky sounds very sensitive after the incident.
I didn't know this kind of thing could cause long-term harm.
And that concludes our review of Bus Maya, a chilling but emotional story.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And please, never let this happen to me.
See you on the next episode.
Stay safe on night buses.
Thank you!